I know Pastor Bree asked it on the front end, during the welcome, are you excited to be here? And I know some of you are like, where I've been here the last 4 weeks, where have you been? Well, I'm excited to be here. It's good to be back in the house of the Lord. It's good to be back. If I have not had the pleasure of meeting you, because you're like, man, I was here 3 weeks ago. I don't know who this guy is up on the stage this morning. Well, just know this, if you don't like the message, there's not going to be a different guy next week, all right? And so I'm in, it's it. And so my name is Lance, and along with my wonderful wife, Angel, we are the co-lead pastors here at Radiant Life Church. And I love to say, it's good to be back with you. It's great to be back with you. But understand, there's still half of us are not back yet because Pastor Angel, can't give the location, but she is about 24 hours away from us overseas, and just sharing her heart and spreading some love all over the world. And man, you're like, well, where were you? What happened? Like, that's a long 30 days, 4 Sundays. That's a long time. Well, last year, Pastor Angel and I celebrated our 10-year anniversary here at the church as the lead pastors. And it was awesome. Coming up on 11 in November. And so the board so graciously said, why don't you take a sabbatical? And a sabbatical is a time for rest. It's a time for refreshing. And I had just that, right? Pastor Angel had that, where we could just kind of get away. We had a spiritual retreat that we did that was amazing. We had a chance to go visit a very large church in Little Rock, Arkansas, and had the pastor's individual attention for about 3.5 hours, where we just got to sit, ask questions. He poured into our lives. It was powerful. It was amazing. And man, I just want to thank the board publicly for thinking of us and loving us enough to support us. And also, can you do me a favor? Can you thank the staff that didn't get the time off and did a wonderful job holding down the fort? The building's still standing, so that's really good, right? I came back and it was still here, and a lot of great things happening, so appreciative. And man, I just want to give you some idea of where we're going over the next 4 weeks, because we're jumping into a brand new sermon series entitled Be the Church. Be the Church. Week 1, we're going to be talking about the church is a place to belong. You are welcomed. You are invited. This is a safe place to find and follow after Jesus. Next week, we're going to be talking about how the church is a place to believe. Right? To believe that you are called, that you are chosen, that God has handpicked you and selected you. And it's you. It's not just your gifts. It's you. Right? You are chosen. Week 3, we're going to talk about how the church is a place to be a beacon. Pastor Angel says it all the time. On our worst days, we point people to ourselves, but on our best days, we point people to Jesus. And so this is a place where we can allow our light to shine. We're going to be an influence in this world one way or the other. Why not do it for his glory? And then we'll wrap up this series talking about how the church is a place to become who God has created you to be. And who you are becoming is more important than who you currently are. Right? So that's where we're going to go. So today, if you're excited to jump into the Word, we're ready to go. One of the core themes of the gospel is the message of you belong. You've been invited to God's family. Look at the person next to you and say, you belong. Now, look at your second choice on the other side and actually say it like you mean it. Say, you belong. Right? This is a great place to know that you belong. One of the worst feelings in the world is feeling left out. Right? When you're like, man, I just don't feel like I can find a place to belong. Right? You hop on social media and you're like, and you see all these people and they're getting together, they're hanging out, and you're like, I didn't get an invitation. Right? And you're like, how come you didn't ask me? Right? There's a family reunion. You don't even get invited. People on vacation having a great time, and you're like, oh, they invited so-and-so. I thought we were friends. Right? Then you get up all on your feels, and you're like, how come I don't feel accepted? By a show of hands this morning, we're going to start off really positive because we're just going to be miserable together. How many of you have ever felt left out? Right? So understand, in the message today, we are all in the same boat. We are all on the same page. This was about 8 years ago. There was a new couple that started attending our church. And I didn't know the couple at the time, but I had seen him. Right? This was a happily married couple. I had seen him at Walmart. He used to work at Walmart. And I noticed he was very easy to spot. And I also knew that there would be people who would mock him and make fun of him and pick on him as he worked at Walmart. And they came to a Radiant Life church, and the church, I want you to know, the church did a great job handling this situation. And you're like, well, what's weird that a couple comes to church? Isn't that normal? Yeah, typically, you come with your spouse, and that's great. That's the way it should. You should attend the same church. A little bit different here, though. This gentleman showed up wearing a skirt, pantyhose, women's shoes, a little bit different. Right, and the church handled it great. But there was this moment where I was sharing with a colleague of mine, and this was about 2 or 3 weeks after he and his wife had been attending the church. And he said, so when are you going to ask him to leave? I was like, I don't know if I'm going to ask him to leave. So you know what I did? I asked him to go to lunch instead. Right? And so I meet with him and his wife, and I take him out to lunch, and hey, tell me your story. Where are you from? He's like, well, I was raised in Alabama. I've been in church my whole life, and man, and here's the story. And then he begins to tell me that when he was a teenager, that he had a massive accident, that he fell from multiple stories and had severe brain damage. And some things started to begin to make sense. And so I went, okay, I see some issues here. I know why. And all we did is we loved and we ministered. And we began to pour into his life. And man, he would show up, he'd worship. He was in the Word. He was a great student of the Word. And I could go into more detail, but at the core of all of us, inside each and every one of us, everybody watching online this morning, there is a desire of our heart to fit in. There is a desire in our heart to be liked. There is a desire in our heart to be accepted. There is a desire inside each and every one of us to belong. And that's all this man wanted, was to belong. And I'm not saying I understood the reasons behind his choices, but I got to know him and his heart. And ask him questions. And I wonder if just what Pastor Matt preached about last week, I wonder if we're willing to ask anyone to have a seat at our table. Or if we're exclusive, like we're a country club, like, oh, you got to be a member, you got to pay. You want to come into my house, you want to come into my home, you want to have a meal with me? Well, then you have to be elite. You got to be a part of a certain club, a certain status. You have to be part of a certain religious organization. But I don't think Jesus gave his life so we could be a country club. He was exclusive in the claim that he made, and we're going to talk about this morning where it's like, Jesus, how are you making this? You're the Son of God? Like, that seems very, who else is saying that? So it's exclusive, but in that claim, it's very inclusive. He's saying, listen, I am the Son of God, and one day I'm going to give my life, and when I give my life, 3 days later, I will raise from the dead so that you could experience life, and so that all could experience life. Because it's through him and by him that we have a place to belong. In a room this size, I can guarantee that some of us have felt unwanted, unworthy, undeserving, or unwelcomed. And so where does someone go? Right? You ever wonder, like, where does someone go to find love? Where does someone go to find peace? Where does someone go to find hope? Where does someone go to find community? Where should someone go to find a place to belong? How about the church? Isn't that a great place to start? With people who say they have a relationship with a loving God, a graceful God, a merciful God. Shouldn't this be a place where people go, man, I don't know what's wrong with you. You people are weird. Right? You love, you're caring, you're kind, you're compassionate. You know, one of the hardest things that I think this was so hard for me. Pastor Angel and I are getting ready to hop on a plane and head to Savannah, Georgia, and we get a text message, we get a phone call that one of our friends, and when I say one of our friends, this guy was the most encouraging person at Radiant Life Church. And I'm not saying that you're not, but I typically would get emails from Mike Ansel almost weekly, but every other week. And he would say, Pastor Lance, that was one of the best messages I ever heard, man. Oh, I so love it when you preach, when you did this. And when you said this and you did this. And he would just share and love and encourage. Not being here for that funeral, ugh. Right, the impact that he had. You want to know what? He found a place to belong. He found a place to belong and he was all in. And so we need to find a place to belong. And where should that be? It should be right here. It should be the church. Here's what I love about Jesus. Jesus embraces those who have been rejected. Jesus embraces those who have been rejected. Did you know, and I'm not picking, if you're a guest here this morning, just know I'm not picking on you, Okay, this is not a pick on you. But every Sunday, we say it all the time, every Sunday is someone's first Sunday. So if you're here this morning, you're like, yeah, this is my first week. Welcome. Welcome. But every Sunday is someone's first Sunday. So if someone shows up, and again, I'm not saying it's you. So don't be like, he's talking to me. I'm not talking to you. But maybe you showed up and you showed up wrinkled and smelly. Did you know that this is a place to belong? We love your wrinkles. Look at my face. I got them, right? Like, we love your wrinkles. If someone shows up and they're struggling with an addiction, do you want to know what? This is the place to belong. It's a safe place. It's a safe place. Now, we also want you to know that we will pray with you because there is a God who celebrates freedom, right, and wants to set you free. But this is a place to belong. You could show up and you could have a different belief system. It's a place to belong. You could show up and have a different political affiliation. It's a place to belong, right? You could show up and be struggling with some type of sin. It's a place to belong. You want to know why? Because we're all in that same boat, right? We're struggling, and you're like, man, I'm not really struggling, but are we? Yes, we're all struggling. You don't have to show up perfect. You just have to show up. Right? If you're waiting to be perfect, if you're watching online, you're like, this is the first time. This is a little bit interesting. You don't have to show up perfect. Like, man, and we hear this all the time. When I get my life right, when I get my life together, then I'm going to start going to church. No, start coming now. You want to know why? Because there is supernatural power available to you to get your life right. But you have to be willing to settle in that. And so you just don't you don't have to show up perfect, but you do have to show up. In Luke chapter 7, there's a powerful story that we're going to read today. Over 2,000 years ago, Jesus is walking the earth, and he is claiming to be God. He's claiming to be God. Now, that's, like I said, that's a powerful statement. And I'm the Son of God. I'm God in the flesh and here on planet Earth. And so surely if the Son of God leaves the throne room of heaven and comes to this place of earth, surely there's going to be a group that he's going to embrace, because there is a group called the Pharisees that are very religious. Right? They are devout. They're so devoted and following after God. They had this outward religious experience. They would wear these robes, right? And have all these tassels. And so when they would walk around in community, everybody knew, oh, they're the Pharisees. Oh, they're very intelligent. They're very wise. They hear from God. And so they had this outward expression of being who they are. They had very eloquent prayers. Right? They wanted to pray in public so that everyone could hear them. So surely if Jesus is going to embrace them, it's going to be them, because understand that anything impure, they wanted nothing to do with it. If you struggle with sin, they would stay as far away from you as they could possibly be. And so one day there's a Pharisee, and his name's Simon, and he decides he's going to throw a party. Right? And so he throws this party and he invites Jesus to come to his party. Now understand, this is a different party than what we would have today. Right? He wasn't outside, smoking some brisket or having some barbecue or grilling some hot dogs, on the grill. This was a different kind of party. Right? He didn't have a tape deck, and he wasn't playing like the 90s at 9. How many know what I'm talking about? How many of you grew up in the 90s and you remember 90s at 9? Yeah, I grew up, when I say I grew up in the 90s, I graduated in 93. So, I was alive in the 90s, right? How many of you remember 90s at 9? You put the tape in the tape deck, and then and all of a sudden it would start, and you would hit record because you were too cheap to actually buy the tape yourself. You're like, I can get it for free. Like before Spotify, iTunes, any of that. You could get it for free if you just hit record. Right? I would hit record and be ready to go, because in 93 you had Tag Team with Whoop, there it is. You had Snow with Informer. I have no clue what he said. But we listened, boom, that, right? And I was like, I don't know what he's saying, but it's got a good beat. Dr. Dre, nothing but a G thing. Shy. If I ever fall in love again. How many remember Shy? Like some of you, I don't know where you were living, but that was next level right there. And the number one song in 1993, the whole year, the number one song is I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston. There were more wrong notes sung in 1993 than any other period in history. Still to this day, people try to sing. And you're like, what does it have to do with the message? Nothing. I was just rambling about 90s at 9, right? That's the whole point of it. Different kind of party. These parties were made public because they wanted to be about discussion. because the Pharisees wanted to be able to show off how much knowledge they had. And so they would meet in this room, this outer room, this gathering place. And then around this outer room, the gathering place, there was a porch that would go around the whole room. And here's what they do. They leave the door open because they wanted people, the outsiders, those who weren't welcomed to that party. They wanted them to surround and sit on the porch and listen in, right? As the Pharisees talked about spiritual things, social trends, politics, theology. They talked about the Cleveland Browns. All right, so the Browns didn't exist, but you got to know I'm a diehard Browns fan, so for the next 18 weeks, you're going to hear about it pretty much every week, so just buckle up, all right? But understand, there was no internet, there was no TV, there's no TikTok, there's no Netflix, and so this was first century entertainment. So Jesus gets an invite to the party, and Jesus is there with the Pharisees, and all of a sudden, someone shows up that did not get an invitation. She was not invited, she was not welcome, and yet when we read in our text in just a moment, she shows up and everybody is shocked. So if you have your Bibles, turn to the book of Luke chapter 7, verse 37. And I always say turn there. I want to pause for a minute. It will be on the screen. But I encourage you, and I encourage you, those who are watching online, just never take my word. Be like, well, yeah, he's the preacher. Open up the word for yourself, dive in it for yourself, unpack it, read it, saturate it, meditate on it. So in the book of Luke, chapter 7, verse 37, it says, a woman in that town who lived a sinful life learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, so she came there with an alabaster jar of perfume. So here the Pharisees are, they're having this party, there's people outside, and they're listening in, and they're having this big debate on pneumatology, and you're like, pneumatology? That's the study of the Holy Spirit. I just used a big word to make it seem like I was a Pharisee and smart. And all of a sudden, this woman shows up. In comes this lady, the audacity of this woman. Understand, when a woman, a sinful life, call girl shows up at a spiritual gathering. And she walks in. She didn't get an invitation. She wasn't invited to the party. She should have stayed on the outside, yet she walks in. And can you imagine the Pharisees' outraged? Remember, they will walk on the other side of the street when they see somebody of her character. Like, no, you're way over there, I'm way over here, because we're not on the same page. And so you're unclean, and you're not wanted, and you're impure, and you don't belong. You weren't invited. And listen, Jesus, we don't associate with these type of people. That's not who we are, Jesus. So let's unpack this for a moment. There's a hurting woman. She's made bad choices. And I can only assume that as a young girl that this is not what she thought her life would look like. That when she was 10, she was dreaming about this moment in her life. I'm sure she thought it would end differently. And we don't know why or how she got herself into this lifestyle. And I don't want to add to the text, but I wonder if we could speculate. Maybe there was an absentee father. Maybe there was abuse in the home. Maybe your parents died young and she was the oldest sibling, and so she needed to make money. She had no other choice. Or maybe there was pressure. Maybe she got pregnant at a young age. And maybe she felt all alone. She was unemployable. So she did whatever she had to do. I'm sure she felt shame, guilt, condemnation. She was always the outcast. She never could belong. She was always lonely, and she was never welcomed in society. And now all of a sudden, she hears that Jesus, this guy who's proclaiming to be the Son of God, is here. He's in her town. And so I need to go and see this person of Jesus. And in Luke chapter 7, verse 38, it says, as she stood behind him at his feet weeping, she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. Now understand, we're like, okay, I see what she's doing. But understand that this makes no sense. This would make no sense to the people that are in the room. Understanding that how expensive perfume is, and yet here she is using that on Jesus' feet. This would have been her most valuable possession. This was her retirement account. This was her savings account. This was her checking account. Everything that she had, she came and poured on the feet of Jesus. It doesn't make any sense because this would also have been her business card. She was in the business, and perfume was so expensive that the majority of women in biblical times did not wear any. But it was an outward sign. I'm available. So here she is. She's taking her business. She's taking everything of value. And in this moment of extravagant worship, man, she gets in this posture of kneeling. Right? She's at the feet of Jesus, and here's Jesus' feet, and yet she's just dumping perfume, and then she's letting her hair down, and she's weeping, and she's just wiping the feet of Jesus. What a powerful moment of worship, where she takes her possessions, everything that she has. It represents her future and where she's going. It was the best she had. It was all that she had. It was the most important thing she did in the moment, was giving everything to Jesus. She worshiped. She surrendered. She's crying at the feet of Jesus. She's feeling that embrace. What she's symbolically saying is, I'm going to leave this old life behind. I don't want to go back to it. I don't need that business card anymore. I don't need that calling card. I don't need this wealth, because I'm going to turn everything over to you, Jesus. And my question to you is, when is the last time you walked into the room and said, Jesus, you can have it all? When's the last time on a Sunday you woke up and you sat down and you said, Jesus, you can have it all? Before the worship starts, before they do the announcements, before the message is preached, Jesus, I just want to give you this. And when I say this, all of this, I want to give you me. I want to give you my heart. Understand that Jesus does not want half of you. He wants all of you. And maybe you're here this morning. Maybe you're watching online. You're like, Pastor Lance, listen, I've been here and I've been attending and I've heard your messages. You preach about like the 3 T's with time and treasures and talents. And I just want you to know I've given all those to Jesus. I love that. We should. We should give of our time and our talents and use those for the service of the kingdom. We should give of our treasures. If he's blessing us, we can be a blessing to others. But what about the skeletons in your closet? Have you given that to Jesus? Well, no. It's called a skeleton for a reason, that no one's supposed to see it. You can't hide it. You can tuck it away. You can act like it doesn't happen. You can ignore it. But the Savior of the world sees it. What about your fears, your worries, your doubts, your anxiety? Did you know that the more of Jesus that you allow in, the less room you have for those things in your life? Because you can only handle so much. There's only so much of a capacity in your mind and in your heart and in your being. So when you begin to decrease and he increases, there's more room for him and less room for you. Here's this woman drying off the feet of Jesus. She didn't bring a towel. Again, she's not following protocol. She's not very good at following the rules. Because it was very inappropriate for a woman in biblical times to let her hair down. And yet she's in public and she's wiping the feet of Jesus. And now there's a response that has to be had. And so here's the Pharisees in Luke chapter 7, verse 39. It says, when the Pharisees who had invited him saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner. So Simon assumed, since Jesus didn't realize who this woman was, that his claims of being the Son of God or a prophet it's impossible. Because if he knew, he wouldn't. And Jesus basically responds with hey, Simon, I hear you. How many know he's the Son of God? I hear you. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're saying. And let me give you something as a response back to your response. And here's Jesus' response in Luke 7, 44 through 48. It says, then he turned toward the woman and said to Simon, right? He turns toward the woman. I wonder if he's making a statement. As in, I see you, but I need to deal with him. I see you, but I'm going to talk to him for a moment. And he says this, you did not give me any water for my feet, but she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me, I love you saying you. Can you hear it? Like, you. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman from the time I entered has not stopped kissing my feet. You did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. Therefore, right, because of, in light of, so because of this, I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, as her great love has shown. But whoever has been forgiven little loves little. Then Jesus said to her, your sins are forgiven. Now understand the custom and the practices of that day. This was very normal that when you would walk into the home of a guest that they would use water and they would clean your feet. Right? They didn't have boots, sneakers, and everything's dirt. So imagine how dirty their feet would be. And so it was very custom. Like you come in and we'll wash your feet. And that didn't happen when Jesus came in. And understand, when you break down the word tears in the original language here, it's not a drop or two. We're talking ugly cry. Like we're talking gusher. We're talking emotions, raw, pure, coming out. And she is just weeping all over the feet of Jesus. And she's using her perfume. And Jesus says, hey, listen, you need to pour oil on my head. I understand oil. We think of oil and we're like, so what are we frying today for lunch? Now, they would use oil for cooking, but it was for everything. Right? They used it as medicine. They used it as oil. They used it as butter. They used it as lotion. He's like, you didn't do that, but this woman took what she had and she gave it to me. And I love that it said that this woman has been forgiven. The grammar of this word, it means that they were already sent away. That her sins were far, far away. Are you catching that? All right, it's in this moment that Jesus is saying, listen, they're gone. They don't have to return back to you in condemnation. You can live in freedom. And I get this. When he says, those of you who have been forgiven little, love little. Those who have been forgiven much, love much. All right, I want you to remember maybe before you were a follower of Christ, and I'm not assuming that everyone watching or listening today is. I want to give you that opportunity, but before Christ, you think about who you were and where you were. And you remember the choices you've made, the things you did, and the way you treated people. You see, for me, I get that. I remember where I was, and I'll never take it for granted, where I was and where he found me and how he found me. And the fact that he loved me enough to pick me up, to save me, to reach down and to say, man, I got a purpose and a calling for your life. So why would this woman do this? Why would she humiliate herself by walking across the town, by walking through the streets? I'm sure people would ridicule and make fun of her. And yet, she barges in. She comes in to meet with Jesus. Maybe she heard him speak before. Maybe she heard about who he was and the love that he had, and she just wanted to experience it. In the book of Matthew, chapter 11, Matthew tells us there's a parallel story, and he tells us what Jesus was preaching to John the Baptist's disciples when there was a question to Jesus. And so this is a parallel story. It's happening right there, like the day before. And so you wonder, like, what was the message for the broken, for the rejected, for this desperate woman that she heard? And it was, you belong. Because here's the message that Jesus would have been preaching in Matthew 11, 28 through 29. You ready for it? Come to me. Come to me. All, I love the word all. All, everyone. All who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. Was that the message she heard? That I can come to him? That in all my sin and all my worries and all my fears and all my doubts and all my rejection, that I could come to Jesus and possibly find rest? Rest from the ridiculed, rest from the rejected, that there would be a yoke or transfer that would take place. I love this because it tells me this. He came down to my yoke. I don't have to go up to his. Now, let me unpack that. You're like, I don't understand what that means. So farmer, right? And you yoke the oxen together, the horses together, right? You want to find animals that are of the same stature and nature because they would be connected together. And so if you got one like this and one like this, one's doing all the work. And so what I mean by that is Jesus isn't saying, listen, when you get right, you can come up to me. He's saying, no, listen, I see you as you are, and I will come down to you. That's why he came to earth. That's why he left heaven. He came to us. We didn't go to him. He came for us. He chose us. And so now it's in this moment where he is choosing you. So you can come to him if you are burdened. You can come to him when you're wrecked. You can come to him when you are overcome with guilt. You can come to him when you have a burden of shame. You can come to him when you're tired of trying to do it on your own. You can come to him when you feel rejected. You can come to him when religion has turned you away. I just want to pause for a moment. Maybe you feel that this morning. You got some church hurt. You can come to him with that. You can come to him when you have nothing left. You can come to him when you've lost all hope. You can come to him when everything within you feels desperate, you can come to him because you belong. You're welcome to the family. Here's what I find interesting about this scripture. Here's a few things that I noticed. Pharisees, the religious people of the time, they pointed out her sin. Pointing out her sin didn't lead her away from her sins. You can point out someone's sin or you can point them to Jesus. I'd rather point people to Jesus and let Jesus deal with their issues. The Pharisees wanted to judge her for her lifestyle, the fact that she didn't change. Did you know that some sin is outward and some sin is inward? Do you want to be judged by what others can't see? Let that sink in for a moment. What if everything in your life that no one knows anything about went on the screen right now? What if what you were thinking right now went on that screen? Oh, I want to see that. I wish he would shut up already. But it doesn't. And lastly, what I see is shaming her didn't set her free. You want to know about shame? And I preach this and I've talked about shame. Is shame will have you running when no one is chasing. Right? You're running away from it and no one's even chasing after it or after you. What changed her? What is it that moved her? Do you want to know what it was? She found a place to belong. She didn't get an invitation to this religious party. She got an invitation to know the Son of God, to experience his grace, to experience his goodness, to find freedom. Jesus didn't come for the healthy. He came for the sick. He didn't come for self-proclaimed righteous people. Jesus came for the hurting, the broken, and the repentant sinner. That's who Jesus came for. Are we willing to embrace that? So she didn't get an invitation, but you get an invitation. You get an invitation today. This may have felt like a religious party to you. Like, isn't that what church is? You just, oh, you religious, righteous people. We're just a group of people who are trying our very best to chase after Jesus. And some of us are a little bit further in our journey than others. That doesn't make us perfect. It just means we've surrendered a little bit more. And so this morning, you are invited to have a seat at his table. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you felt unwanted, if you've ever failed, if you've doubted God, if you've questioned God, or you feel like you've hurt God. Maybe you feel like you've let God down. You've tried and you failed, and he still invites you. You can come to him if you feel ashamed. You can come to him if you feel unworthy. You can come to him. If you have hang-ups, you can come to him and bring your baggage. You can come to him if you have a past. He's just asking you to come. Pastor Matt shared this story last week about a wedding that was taking place in Luke 14, and Jesus is like, listen, I want you to invite everybody. Send the message, send this. This is going to be great. And word comes back, no one's coming. Like, no one's coming to the party. Everybody's got an excuse. They're too busy. There's kids' football games. They're tired. You know, today's the start of the NFL, and the Cleveland Browns are on at 1. So if church was at 1, I wouldn't be here because I would have something more important to do. But since you offer 9, I have plenty of time to be able to come to church, worship, get home, prepare my foods, and be ready to go. But there's this invitation, and no one shows up. And I love what the word says. Listen, Jesus is like, okay, if no one's coming, here's what I want you to do. Everybody who feels rejected, go invite them. The crippled, who none of you want to love, invite them to my party. Oh, the lame, invite them to my party. The blind, invite them. Those with leprosy, bring them too. I want my party to be filled because I accept and embrace those who have been rejected. And what is Jesus saying? There's still room. Compel them. There's plenty of room. There's plenty of space. And Jesus is saying the same thing to all of us today. There's still room. There's still room, and the church is a great place to belong. So as I close today, I'm just going to encourage you for a moment if you close your eyes. And when I say close your eyes, we're not doing anything hokey. We're not doing anything weird. It's just a moment where this is for you individually. Right? The Holy Spirit, my prayer has been speaking to your heart this whole message. And so I just want you to have a personal time of reflection. So the first thing I'm going to ask, maybe you don't relate to the woman in her struggle, but maybe you have your own. and you've always felt like the outcast and there wasn't a place for you, I want you to know there's still room. Jesus is offering you a seat at his table today. Right? You go to a wedding and you're not a part of the bridal party. You're not the bride or the groom, and so you can't sit at that front table. I just want you to know that the bride of heaven is saying, listen, there's always more room. I've invited a lot of people, but I have more seats. You can sit up front. You are welcomed. It's a place to belong. And so if you want to give your life to Jesus today, if you're watching online, we want to pray with you. If you're in the room this morning, we want to pray for you this morning. I'm not going to call your name. I'm not going to ask you to do anything crazy. This is a moment between you and the Lord. If you're like, that's me. I've never felt welcomed. I've never felt embraced. I want you to know it's not about Radiant Life Church. It's about his church, his kingdom, big. He's saying, I want you to come to me, all you are weary. If you're weary this morning, he can give you rest. You're struggling, he can give you rest. You feel like an outcast, he welcomes you. So if you want to give your life to Jesus this morning, would you just slip up your hand, because I want to pray with you. I want to pray with you this morning. Say, that's me, thank you. Anyone else? That's me. I feel rejected, but I want to feel his embrace. I want to feel that love. I want to feel that welcome. Thank you. Thank you. So Jesus, this morning, every hand and every heart that says, I need you. God, I pray this morning, right now, with every individual underneath the sound of my voice. Lord, I pray that right now in this moment, Lord, they would experience your power, your presence. Lord, that they would feel your embrace. They would feel your love. They would feel your acceptance. Father, we don't jump into the lake and catch the fish and clean it and throw it back in. No. So God, I pray this morning that you would catch, that you would embrace, that you would do the work that only your Spirit can do. And just like that woman, God, I pray that we would give everything. So do a great work in us and through us, Lord, this morning. Lord, thank you for every hand. If you raised your hand this morning, would you just pray with me? God, we admit that we need you. We can't do it on our own. We've tried. God, we believe. Just like you were showing to the Pharisees, we believe. You made the claims that you were the Son of God. We believe you are the Son of God, that you gave your life at Calvary for us, that through you and in you is an opportunity for us to be in right relationship with the Father, that our names would be written in the Lamb's book of life because you are the Son of God. And Lord, this morning, we confess our need and we confess our sins. God, we ask that you would move into those areas of our heart where there's pain, where there's burden, where there's worry, where there's anguish, where there's abuse, where there's struggle, where there's issues. And all of those skeletons, Lord, we pray that we would surrender them to you, that you would occupy that space, that we could decrease so you in us would increase. We give you thanks in Jesus' name. Amen. This morning, we're going to close out service. I ask the worship team to come back up, and we're going to sing a song, and maybe you've never heard this song before, and I'm just going to encourage you to do me a favor when they start singing in just a moment. If you feel led, you feel compelled, would you just stand to your feet and raise your hands and surrender? You see, we talked about how the church is a place to belong. This is not our church, it's his church. And the word says that he's going to build his church, and the gates of hell, right, the gates of Hades will not prevail. But here's the thing, when Jesus is going to build his church, he's going to pick you. He's going to select you, and he's going to say, listen, I'm going to pick you, and I'm going to use you. I'm going to use you to build the church. I'm going to use you as a vessel that will bring me glory and honor. I'm going to use you in your story, in your past, in your journey, that you would point people to me. So he's going to build his church, and he's going to use you. So if that's you, and you're like, I want him to use me, I want him to be able to build his church. And I want to be a part of his church because the church is a place to belong. So as we sing this morning, I would just encourage you to stand to your feet and just worship and say, God, build your church and use me. Use me as I surrender to you, that you would use me as a vessel of honor as we build a foundation upon you, that the gates of hell will not prevail because you will, Lord. You will, because you are victorious. Amen? If you got the victory, let's shout it to him this morning.